Hello there folks, I'm the Lon Chaney Reviewer, and welcome to the 12th episode of Silent Film Saturday, the weekly series where I analyze a silent film every Saturday. This week's episode is the 1926 swashbuckling motion picture, The Black Pirate, starring that legendary silent swashbuckler himself, Douglas Fairbanks Sr. Let's take a look at this package from Kino. Okay, so as you can see, this is the Black Pirate Blu-Ray from Kino Entertainment. They are very good with their silent films. If you don't recognize them, they've done a lot of the German Expressionist films on decent DVD editions and the Buster Keaton films on Blu-ray. Beautifully restored films, by the way. And their work is still excellent, especially with this Black Pirate release. A fully restored Technicolor motion picture. The cover is beautiful. They use a poster of the film. You know, Douglas Fairbanks, The Black Pirate. I love the classic writing up here. And it's a slipcover. So let's just look at the other end of this package. The special features. The film is restored in its original 2-strip Technicolor form. High definition. Score by Mortimer Wilson and conducted by Robert Israel from 1996. Organ score by Lee Irwin. Audio commentary by film historian Rudy Belmer. Complete talkie version minus intertitles with orchestral score and narration by Douglas Fairbanks Jr., which is 75 minutes long. 18 minutes of outtakes with commentary by Rudy Belmer. And 29 minutes of additional outtakes courtesy of the Library of Congress, along with a photo gallery. The regular film itself is 95 minutes long, and it's 1:3:3 aspect ratio. The main plot of this film concerns a ship that was just raided by a bunch of pirates and is destroyed. There are no more remains of the ship except for 2 survivors, Douglas Fairbanks and the character's father, who is also actually played by Douglas Fairbanks' real father. And the father eventually dies, and Fairbanks' character swears vengeance on the murderers. The pirates who raided the ship go to the island that Fairbanks was eventually landed on, and they bury the treasure, and the captain and lieutenant of the ship intend to kill everyone else, that way they can have the treasure for themselves. Which is rather ruthless, but Fairbanks interrupts this and requests that he joins the pirate crew and asks who the best fighter is, and the best fighter is apparently the captain. And what takes place is a really well done sword fight, in my opinion. I enjoyed this fight very much, and that's why I really enjoy swashbuckling films. I love when the characters sword fight and it has a benefit in the story. You know, in this case, Fairbanks has to prove to the rest of the pirates that he is worthy to join their crew. That way he will be able to exact his vengeance. Fairbanks eventually kills the pirate captain, but they still want Fairbanks to prove himself. What's really interesting about this film is the fact that a good portion of it doesn't really use title cards. And Douglas Fairbanks, I feel, in a few of his films, including the Zorro films, in my opinion, have a lot of title cards, and that's not a bad thing, but it can be distracting from the story. But in this film, you have a few title cards in the very, very beginning, but the rest of the title cards in the rest of the film are very scarced out. They're spread out, and they're only used to tell the story in necessary pieces of dialogue or scene introduction. And that's what I really love about this film. A lot of it is just the visual imagery, and you're able to appreciate the overall spectacle of the film. Also, I like to commend Douglas Fairbanks' performance. I really enjoyed him as the character of the Black Pirate. He's a very likable character with a semi-tragic backstory, and you really want him to get his vengeance against the pirate captain and lieutenant for killing his father and the rest of their crew. We have Donald Crisp as Mctavish, who is a really nice comedic supporting character, and he's basically the Black Pirate's buddy on the ship. So that's pretty cool. And Donald Crisp also directed the Douglas Fairbanks film Don Q, Son of Zorro, which is a sequel to his 1920 film, The Mark of Zorro. Another one of the tasks that the Black Pirate is asked to do is to raid and basically conquer a ship by himself, which he does that in the very famous scene where he climbs up the ship's masts and is able to tear a hole in the mast. Now, don't try this at home, kids, because there have been incidents where kids tried and they get injured, as heard in the Rudy Belmer commentary track. And I believe it's practically impossible to do something like that. So what they had to do was, they had to basically have Fairbanks in harness. There's a counterweight on the other side of the mast, and the mast had to be powered by airplane propellers on the other side, so that way made the ship look like it was, getting blown by the wind. And the hole was already cut, but it was invisibly stitched to appear that it was already together, and that way Fairbanks could easily cut through the mast multiple times. And it's one of probably the most memorable sequence in the entire film, because it's just so badass. It has a badass quality to it. The character just sliding down the mast and taking down a ship by himself. That's rather impressive. And the effect still works. Other scenes I'd like to mention within the film, well, basically of course, the explosions in this film, when the ships explode, it's impressive. Obviously, they look like miniatures, but it's still preferable to see a miniature that explode than a CGI effect that's, when you think about it, not even on the screen exploding. For example, like the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, some instances use real ships, but, like, in this day and age, we use CGI for a lot of things, and it's really nice to see a physical effect being performed on the screen with the use of miniatures. Once Fairbanks becomes the captain of the ship, he finds a princess on the ship, and it's obvious that she becomes the love interest for the rest of the film, and the third act is a little slow because of the developments between her and Fairbanks' characters. Another character of note, though, I would like to mention is the character of the pirate lieutenant played by Sam DeGrasse, and he was also in Douglas Fairbanks' film Robin Hood. And he plays a very good villain. He is the main villain. Even though the pirate captain in the beginning of the film seems like he's going to be the main villain, it's actually the pirate lieutenant that ends up becoming the villain, because the pirate captain is killed, but now the pirate lieutenant has to deal with this random guy that was on an island taking over his rightful place. And this leads the lieutenant to make some decisions that are not for the benefit of the crew, but for his own benefit. And that's a really interesting character, and he plays that rather well. A character that feels like he deserves more than he should get. The production design on this film is rather impressive, as is with a lot of Fairbanks productions. For example, the ships themselves are really beautiful looking. Like the larger portions, when we have close-ups of the ship, when especially in the beginning of the film where we have the pirates loading up on the ship, loading their loot. It really looks like almost looks like they're on the sea, even though they are on a studio tank more than likely. I also love the island sequences when the characters are on the island in the beginning of the film. And I just love the artificiality of certain scenes, like with the matte painting of certain rocks and other props that are within the film. Another thing I love is the buried treasure. In the beginning of the film, when two crew members go underwater, they go to this underwater compartment cave or whatever, and they put the treasure in there, and it's really cool. And you can tell there was a lot of thought and money put into this production. Other elements of the production I love. Again, I really dig this two-strip Technicolor, even though sometimes the actor's skin can be sometimes overly pale. Like there's some scenes where it looks like Douglas Fairbanks looks very sickly, and that shouldn't happen. But that's just the way the technology is. This film is two-strip Technicolor for the most part. I only noticed one instance where it was black and white, and that was like literally a 2-second shot in the pirate captain Fairbanks duel in the beginning of the film. Of course, all of the raiding scenes are really cool. Any scenes where characters are running around on the ship. I like when they find the princess later on in the film, and she's running around the ship and men are chasing after her while Fairbanks is trying to give a speech like, look, we got to do things like this, so we got to get the ransom. That way, we can get money for the entire crew, and it'll benefit all of us, not just one of us. There's certain shots in the film that I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed when Fairbanks puts his smaller sword or knife into the ground, with the cutting part upwards, and he pushes the captain into it. That's a really interesting scene. It's a nice setup and it's a nice shot. It's very well executed. Other scenes, I like it when you see the princess try to cut the ropes off of Fairbanks when he's about to walk the plank, and then you see Donald Crisp. It's like, what are you doing? You can't have that. And he puts the knife between his pants, and he cuts the rope off of Fairbanks. And I like that shot, because that Mctavish is still on the side of the Black Pirate. There's a talkie version of the film. If you want to check this version out, go for it. It's actually in black and white, which is an interesting experience to watch, because it really is a totally different experience when you watch something from 2-strip technicolor to black and white. It's not just, it's slightly different. No, it's completely different. And it changes almost the whole mood of the motion picture. And Douglas Fairbanks Jr.'s narration works out rather well. Another great element to the bonus features on this film is Rudy Belmer. Rudy Belmer's commentary track in the film is incredibly insightful. I enjoy his commentary on the outtakes of the film, and I highly recommend you examine the outtakes because it really gives us an examination into Fairbanks' working process on the film, as well as certain pieces of film that didn't make it. There's also another half hour or so of footage that is not does not have a commentary by Rudy Belmer, but it's supplied by the Library of Congress, and I highly suggest you check it out because it's rather informative and interesting, and the footage sometimes speaks for itself. This would be Fairbanks' last Technicolor motion picture, as well as his first. 2 years later, the 2-strip process would improve, and then in 1932, the 3-strip Technicolor process was introduced, and that is what most people think of when they think of Technicolor in films like Gone with the Wind, Wizard of Oz, and The Red Shoes. Douglas Fairbanks is the Black Pirate. This Blu-ray is one of my favorite silent film Blu-rays that I own. I treasure this one in my collection very much for the slipcover, the supplemental features, and the film itself is entertaining, it's a spectacle, and it's rather compelling. So on DVD or Blu-ray, I recommend this for any veterans of silent film viewing or novices of silent film viewing. Thank you for watching this week's episode of Silent Film Saturday, and next week I shall be talking about the Lon Chaney production of Nomads of the North. See you guys next week.